This is the Unscripted Podcast. I got a question for you.
Okay.
What weapon did Cain use to kill Abel?
Let me just tell you, Bob. So all the way over here, I thought about a way that we could segue into an introduction with this. And you know what I came up with?
What?
Bob, how do you think Cain killed Abel?
Are you serious?
I'm serious. That's what all the way over, because, I was studying with this lady this morning, and on the way over here, I was thinking, like, we need to come up with a way that we don't look stupid when we come out to shoot on this thing. And that's exactly what I come up with, too. And, what do you think he used?
I don't know.
And
there ultimately everything from here on will be speculation, because there's not a man alive who actually knows. The Bible didn't tell us.
Yeah, and
I can do a lot of.
But there's a lot of things he could have used.
Oh yeah, there's
like we think that he used something. You understand what I'm saying? Like we think that he used a rock or a stick. I say that we like collectively, but I mean like it could have just been as easy as push him off a cliff.
Yeah, or he could have choked him to death.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like there's a lot of ways.
Oh yeah,
that this event could have happened.
Well, and like they weren't. They were more modern than what people think than they were.
It's not like they came out just a scotch above a caveman.
You go into the next chapter and they're craftsmen of iron and bronze.
Tubal Cain.
Yeah.
I mean,
they're craftsmen of iron and bronze. And okay, think about this. He's a keeper of the sheep, Abel is, and you have to. And he brought forth some of his. What'd he do? Did he choke the sheep? Did he bring it to God?
That's right.
No, he probably had a knife.
If you'll just keep this thing still for a minute, I'm trying my best.
Lord, hold on a minute. I'm trying to choke out this sheep for a second.
Right, he won't quit wiggling. He's biting me. Yeah, no, right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, there had to have been some kind of implement to use. And so,
okay, and then think about this. How did Cain work the ground?
Yes, I mean,
because he had to work the ground after that, because God said when he kicked out Adam and Eve, he said, cursed is the ground now, sweat and toil. So he had to use something. So I don't know what he's out there using, but he had to use something, some kind of tool that he had to come up with to work the ground.
Absolutely. And so, today what are we going to talk about?
We're talking about self-defense in the Christian. And that's the bottom line is, can a Christian use self-defense? Can they defend themselves with a weapon, with a non-weapon, period? Can you defend yourself?
So why do you think, going back to our question, that the Lord wanted us to, why do you think the Lord, we can only speculate with stuff, right? But why do you think the Lord didn't write in the story what Cain used?
Well, because ultimately guns are not the problem, knives are not the problem. It's personal responsibility is the problem. Yeah,
that's what he says. You remember when he asked him, "Where's your brother at?" And he's, "I don't know, my brother's keeper."
Yeah.
And you step back one step from that when he realizes that Abel has brought a more excellent. Hebrews 11 says a more excellent sacrifice.
Right.
It says his countenance fell when he kind of, Cain, has got this smug look about him, and God telling him something real important there. Be careful, son. Sin lies at the door.
Sin lies at the door. That's what I was fixing to look up, yeah.
Sin lies at the door. And so the reason why he tells him that is because it's always going to start in your heart.
That's
Jesus
right.
said it. You remember?
That's right.
He said it's not what goes in you that defiles you, but what comes out of you. Because out of the heart proceeds all murders, adulteries, all these filthiness things, all the things that pollute us. They don't start on the outside. So it's not what I grab a hold of, not my tool, my implement, my whatever. Have you ever did you ever have to work murder scenes?
Oh yeah, all kinds.
So what are some things that people use?
Everything. I've worked them with rope, guns, knives. There's not one that's like coming to my mind like something crazy off the top of my head right now, but yeah, just like poison. I mean, there's all kinds of.
You give people. So here's the kicker to this: is that if you give a man the desire to do something, at Bible, God says this kind of really unique thing. There's nothing that they set their hearts to now that they won't accomplish. So that's and I know he's talking about like
building, Tower of Babel,
all these things, but that's true in every situation.
That's right. Yeah, a hammer. a hammer was used several times. And that was amongst gang members, white supremacist gang members.
Yeah, and so like there's several times in the Bible, like Absalom. You ask my boys how Absalom got killed. Well, his hair gets caught in the tree, and he ends up with 3. The Bible says darts in the heart. So like a spear or an arrow, he gets 3 in the heart, right? So sometimes it points to real specific ways that somebody died. The God writes it in the story so you can see the story. Right?
Yeah, I want to read this verse too. If God talking to Cain, if you do well, will you not be accepted? If you do not do well, sin lies at the door, and its desires for you, but you should rule over it. And that's the problem with the world today is the heart problem. It's the personal responsibility. Sin's always lying at the door, but if you do well, you'll be accepted.
And let me just tell you something, Bob. I had this speech worked up in my mind Sunday night before we had our thing, or our Sunday night assembly. But Bob, I just want to tell you, you did such a jam up job Sunday morning, and just talking about responsibility. And I know that you talked about some real tough stuff, and I know that the things you talked about were, man, they're tough. But I mean, it's a blessing to know that your elders and your brothers and sisters, are supporting you in those things. But man, and you think about how much the home affects these things.
Yeah.
I mean, this unfortunately, this young man that caused all this devastation in Texas just in the last couple of weeks, I mean, all that comes from a broken home.
Another broken home, another school shooter.
Yeah, I mean, there's just this common thread that runs through all these things. And so the question we got to ask and answer ourselves is this.
Yeah, could a teacher defend themselves against a school shooter?
Could they do that?
Yeah.
And if so, we can offer our opinion.
That's right.
But that really won't matter a whole
No.
lot. And so ultimately, if we see that every decision is a spiritual decision, you understand what I'm saying, right? Like everything that I'm going to do is a spiritual decision. That's going to change the way that I do it.
Absolutely. And to go with that, like whatsoever is not of faith is sin.
That's right. And so let's ask, and let's just look at some. So you have people. I'd say that there's kind of like 2 schools of thought. Wouldn't you say?
You talking about in Christianity or in the world?
Well, and you can't. The world will ever be a shifting sand.
Always. But generally speaking, though, most of the worldly people say it's okay to defend yourself.
And so just because the world says something's right doesn't mean that it's right.
No, talked about that Sunday morning.
Yeah. But so what we need to do then is...
Yeah, in Christianity, you have those people who stand on the side of self-defense, and then you have the people who you would consider that would be more on the passive side, pacifist.
Yeah, and I understand, and these are well-meaning brethren, and
we love them.
We love them, right? But I don't fall into that camp, and I'd like to take some time and just look at what the scriptures say.
Absolutely.
With regards to that. Is that okay if we can do that?
And we're right here in Genesis. Can we hit one general thing? All right, so here's one thing. So you and your wife, y'all go running, all right? Sometimes Jessica does a lot of running. But I'm just saying, okay, let's just say Jessica, she's running on the road, and you got a pit bull that runs out after her and tries to attack her. Can she defend herself against that pit bull?
Yes.
Why?
Because it's a dog and it's trying to hurt her.
Exactly. And so there's 2 principles that God gives to us in Genesis 9 when Noah come off the ark.
Okay.
And there are 2 principles that I believe still stand today.
Okay. Genesis 9.
Genesis chapter 9.
All right, let's go there.
So he talks about Noah comes off the ark, verse 2, and the fear and dread of you shall be upon every beast of the earth, and on every bird of the air, and on all that move on the earth, and all flesh of the sea. They are given into your hand. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you. I have given you all things, even as the green herbs. Now, little side note here. God had given man green herbs and given every beast of the field green herbs to eat until after the flood. Now, that's why Noah could get along with all these animals on the ark.
Right.
Because none of them ate meat.
Yeah, it points to this idea that the world was there, the world that was no longer.
They were vegetarians.
Yeah, so
Chris and Bob would not have survived.
I'm glad I live afterwards.
I know.
But you know what, though? I mean, to be honest with you, things that eat meat don't taste as good as things that don't eat meat.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, so like that's why cows and stuff like that
They taste good.
Taste so much better than eating a dog.
Yeah, you try to eat a coyote, good luck.
Yeah, that's right. Or bear, right?
Yeah.
Like, people,
but even when me and you skin those animals too, and like just the smell of those animals,
right?
They're rough.
Yeah, they stink.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, they just stink.
You get a fish that I mean. Sharks, they stink so bad.
Yeah, ducks. There's certain ducks that you don't want to eat the ducks because they eat fish. Mm-hmm. You know, you want to eat the ducks that eat corn and stuff like that, eat grain.
That's right.
And so here we go.
So then verse 4, but you shall not eat flesh with its life, that is its blood. Surely for your lifeblood I will demand a reckoning. From the hand of every beast I will require it, and from the hand of every man. From the hand of every man's brother I will require the life of man. Whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed. For in the image of God he made man. And then he tells him you need to go forth and multiply. But this is a verse 6, whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed. So there's two things. One is all animals are now given into the hand of the dominion of man.
Well, that doesn't mean we can just go out there and beat them with clubs if we want to.
No.
Right? It's subduing, it's the idea that you're going to rule over them.
That's right. If you need to eat one of them, you can do that.
Right.
It's not a sin if you kill an animal.
Right.
It's not a sin if you eat a hamburger from McDonald's. And then the second thing is whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed. There's this idea that because he says for in the image of God he made man. So if man is going to shed blood, then there's going to be some discipline. There's going to be some disciplinary action, and you need to take action for that.
Yeah. So then let's back up. Then was this the first time it was wrong?
No.
Just because God said it, what were we 9 chapters into the Bible? Is that when it became wrong?
No.
No, it was wrong from the beginning.
That's right.
Yeah, there was a moral when Cain with the rock, with the stick, with the pushing him off a cliff, choke slam, whatever he did, right? The whatever he did to kill his brother, it was still wrong to do that. But God, you're trying to point out, I think, that there's this overarching theme that God wants us to understand, that if you do this, there is somebody that sits in judgment over that because of that.
Yeah, and that's a man who's going to sit in that judgment.
That ties into Romans 13.
Absolutely.
You want to look at that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Because we talked about that. I don't know, in the last couple of weeks about the Christian's responsibility when we were talking about abortion, but there's kind of a unique thing that happens in there.
Yeah, and I just wanted to point out too if Jessica's running down the road and she can defend herself against a dog that's going to maul her, why can't she defend herself against a man who's going to maul her?
Yeah,
because God says, hey, whoever sheds man's blood, by man his blood shall be shed. So does that mean that Jessica has to wait till somebody draws blood on her before she can draw blood back? No, and so. And I think that
she's standing in judgment.
That's right.
She's making a judgment. Like somebody comes running, like she carries
don't say what all she carries.
Yeah, she carries a lot.
She's ready.
Yeah, she carries protection with her all the time.
Yeah,
not just protection, but enough to make racket and everything.
Yeah,
we practice it. Literally, we practice at our house. Like, what happens if this happens? So she can like go through the motions, right? And there's even a way that she won't go unless I'm with her. She doesn't even like it that way when we go run. That she won't do it because she's scared of the dogs.
Yeah, she won't go that direction.
Yeah, and so.
Anyways, go ahead.
She wants to protect. So what that means is, if somebody comes running at her with a tire iron, right, or somebody comes, a car balls up, some dudes come running out of it. You know what she's got to do? She's got to make a judgment right then that they're getting ready to shed blood. So if they shed blood, what would they be done? They would be judged, right? Mm-hmm. Do I not then have a responsibility to not let them shed blood, especially if it's my own, right?
Yeah, right.
So in Romans 13, it points to this idea that look at this right here. Romans 13, verse 1. Let every soul be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God. And the authorities that exist are appointed by God. Therefore, whoever resists the authority, resists the ordinance of God, and will resist. Who resists will bring judgment on themselves. For rulers are not a terror to do good, but to evil. Do you want to be afraid of the authority? Do what is good, and you will have the praise of them. For he's God's minister, to you for good. But if you do evil, be afraid, for he does not bear the sword in vain. For he is God's minister and an avenger to execute wrath on him who protects evil. Why would the word sword be in there and not whip?
Yeah, because, so the sword is an execution thing. The whip is a punishment thing.
That's exactly right. Because he's showing the finality of it. So, and here's how you know. Paul wrote this in Romans 13. And when Paul is on trial in the book of Acts, and he appeals to Caesar, and he says, if I have done anything worthy of death, I'll accept my fate. Why is that? Because Paul realizes that God, this is even post, that's in the New Testament time period. The law that Paul would be judged under will be the same law that will be judged under. So Paul says, if I've done anything worthy of death, then I accept my fate. And so here's the question then. Is it wrong for me to kill a dog? No. Is it wrong for me to kill somebody that's doing this against me? No. Okay, then let's take it another step. Is it wrong for the government to kill somebody that has killed somebody? No, right?
Right.
So, and I want you to, you got something you want to add to this?
Well, part of that is some people are going to argue that Romans 13 is only for the police officer.
Okay.
And they're going to say that's only for
or military,
that they're only going to say that. And so what some people in the brotherhood will say is they'll preach and they'll say, well there's that if a man that marriage, divorce, and remarriage, like they'll start off saying, okay, well if a man gets divorced before he becomes a Christian.
Okay, I follow your logic. Keep going.
If a man gets divorced before he becomes a Christian, then God doesn't hold him to that standard because he
there's two standards.
There's two standards is what they'll say.
So Christians have one law and
then everybody else have another law.
Yeah, outside the body of Christ.
Yeah, and then they'll say, but once he becomes a Christian, then he can't get divorced. All right, like then God will hold his divorce against him. Well, if you put that on, let's flip that to the police officer side. So a man on the way to get baptized as a police officer, if Romans 13 is only to police and not to a Christian, and let's just say that a Christian can only that a non-Christian can serve as a police officer, but a Christian can't serve as a police officer. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. That's saying that once you become a Christian, that then you can't serve in the military, you can't serve as a police or whatever, because there's a chance that you might take somebody's life. Now, I'll say this, that if you feel so strong that it's what do you want to call it? Like
a sin to you?
A sin to you. James says, to him that thinketh that it to be sin, to him it is sin. So if you think it's wrong, then you need to do it. You need to. You need not do that thing, right? And Romans 13 and 14 is a great one about growing through those things too.
That's right.
That like there's just certain things that weaker brothers, weaker spiritually, they have to go through. So if you think that's wrong, you still need to do that, right? If you think it's wrong to be a police officer. But what you're saying it's not that.
Yeah, so if a police officer is a non-Christian and he's on the way to the baptistry and he sees someone trying to kill children and he takes out his service weapon and he kills that person who's trying to kill children, okay, then he's justified. But then some people on the pacifist side who are Christians that we love, they say, well, okay, well if this law then is okay for him, that he needs to that if he comes out of the baptistry waters and he's going home and he's got his service weapon and there's a child someone trying to kill children, then he's going to and if he pulls out his weapon after he becomes a Christian, then now he's going to be condemned because God's holding him to this standard. No,
that's false.
That's false.
So you think about this. So let's put this in logic then. Let's say that a man, how many people have we studied with and baptized that have had children outside of wedlock? I'm going to tell you, with 70% of kids born that way today, that means that we're going to have a majority, more than likely, of people that are going to fall into that category. Does that mean that if there are two laws for the Christian and for the non-Christian, right, to the saved and to the lost, that means that once a person becomes a Christian, if their marriages don't count, then that means that their kids don't count either, right?
Yeah.
So do you have a responsibility to your kids after you become a Christian?
Absolutely.
Let's just say you got two, like I've told you the story about have I told you about the guy with the 24 kids?
No, he needs a reality show though.
No, he needs a hobby is what he needs. Another hobby, actually. But
Right.
but this guy was sitting here and he was my age.
24. I got 4.
Yeah.
And I'm happy they're in Tennessee right now.
Listen, I'm telling you, Bob, he was his wife was pregnant with their 8th, her 9th. Right?
Yeah.
He had been in prison for 10 years. Okay?
Her 8th child, but their 9th? Okay.
No. Her 9th.
Their 8th.
Their 8th.
I was about to say.
Yeah.
How does that happen?
Her 9th. She had one before him,
Yeah.
and they had 8 together.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And he said that he had 24 all together. He was my age. He was like 41 or 42.
Man.
And had been in jail for, I figured it up about, like quick math, about 8 or 10 years. So he'd only had about 30 early, maybe 32, 33 years worth of breeding.
Yeah.
And he had 24 kids. So this old boy, he had a long road to hoe in repentance. Yeah. You understand?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But would we say that he didn't have any responsibility to those kids?
No, he had every bit of responsibility to them.
Now, a mess.
Yeah. So right back on this for just a second is some of our pacifists will say, Christians will say, okay, well, I can't defend myself, but I need to rely on the military or the police. That it's okay if someone's trying to kill me in society, and now I need to call the police and let them come and do that. All right? Well, we're right here in Romans 13. Well, Romans 14:22 says this, that for this reason, I'm sorry, I'm in 15.
Let me read it.
Romans 14:22. Do you have faith? Have it to yourself before God. Happy is he who does not condemn himself in what he approves. And so if a man were, if I call the police and the police execute somebody because while they're trying to kill children, all right, and if it's lawful for them to do that, but it's not lawful for me, well, I'm approving of that because I called them to do that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the Romans 1 scenario. Like this, the Romans 1:32, they have this idea that they're talking about the men that have traded the natural use of men, and it goes through, and God's going to condemn those, and also those who approve of it, right? So if you think it's sinful to do this, and you're approving of it, and you're providing a segue into it, you know what you're doing? You're just as guilty as they are.
And you don't need to call the police then.
Yeah, exactly right. What you need to do is just plead with him. Mm-hmm. Plead with the crazy person.
Please stop shooting children.
Right.
I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
I don't care if you got a 6-round magazine or 2 30s duct taped together. Mm-hmm. You plead with that guy.
Yeah.
When he's already got, bodies on the ground, right? Because this guy that went into it appears that this guy went into the classroom and locked himself in, and the majority of the people that the mess that he made, the majority of the people were in one classroom. It appears to be.
Yeah, it was a double classroom, Jack and Jill.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, I'm just one little area. Mm-hmm. So he didn't go in there to shoot people. He went in there to be crazy. You understand? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And all these people lost their lives because of what he did. He went in there to be crazy.
Yeah.
So he just happened, his implement of craziness was his gun.
Yeah, and what's, I mean, he wrecked his truck, and he got out and started shooting at these funeral home guys. They were running down to help him from the scene of this accident. He gets out of his truck and starts shooting at them. Mm-hmm. Then they run back and they call the police, and this poor teacher goes outside. She goes outside and hears these gunshots. She goes in and gets her phone, comes back outside, calls the police, then goes back inside, and she doesn't shut the door. Mm-hmm. And that's the door that he came in. Mm-hmm. I mean, left it and so he had already fired, I think they said something like 122 rounds into the school, outside of the school. Anyways, this is we could break down that whole situation. There's a lot of people that failed those children that day, but it doesn't, when there are evil people who are out there in this world, and there's and so
let's take a break then, and let's talk about how to deal with the evil people when we come back. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
We've had several questions, and we want to take a moment to answer them and introduce ourselves to the community. One of them is, what makes our church special? Well, it's the people. The people here we are such a family, and we are a community of people that want to help each other grow stronger and overcome our obstacles. We want to invite you to join us and join our community of people in our family. We are located at 415 South 40th Avenue in Hattiesburg. Come connect with us and join.
I want to hit one verse right quick before we go into some of that.
All right.
And then I think that this will help us. So let's go to 1 Timothy 5, and I know you're familiar with this verse. But 1 Timothy 5 and verse 8 talks about how that a man's supposed to provide for his own. And I just want to use a little reasoning here. It says, but if anyone does not provide for his own, and especially for those of his household, he's denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. And in context here, he's talking about if widows, and you taking care of your mama, and as a person, and if you can't take care of your mama financially, and keep her from starvation, then you're worse than an unbeliever. You've denied the faith. Now, the question that I have is Paul right to this and saying, well, you need to protect your mother from starvation and protect her from the elements of the cold or the heat and give her a home, and you need to protect her from illness, but don't protect her from rapists and murderers?
That's, of course, is what he means, Bob. That's exactly what he means. He means, like, if somebody comes in your mama's house and going to start acting crazy and want to beat her or rape her or something like that, you've done your part. You made sure she was fed. Does that
no sense whatsoever?
Is there any logic in that?
No, and so as an individual, I have to protect my family. I have to provide for them. And part of that provision, and we've stated that on the podcast before, that part of that's protection. And so I'm to protect them from starvation. I'm to protect them from illnesses. I'm to protect them from rapists, and I'm to protect them from murders. And people will go, well, Bob and Chris, y'all didn't read Romans 12 right before that when talking about loving your enemies. Well,
and it also says, if it's possible, in there.
Mm-hmm.
If it's possible,
live peaceably.
Yeah, with all men, as much as it lies in you.
Yeah.
Well, there's a point where you can't live and I'm going to say this, and I don't mean this to sound cold, but the best thing that some people can do is leave this world.
Mm-hmm.
The way that they can make the world better is to not be part of it. If you think about this in 1 Timothy 5, this is Paul helping Timothy understand what his job as this evangelist is in helping the church there in Ephesus. So Paul tells Timothy, son, you got to understand that there's this really special way, and this is how you know this. Look at what he says in verse 7, and these things command that they may be blameless. God wants his people to look, live, act, behave, represent in a very different way. So if you've got your mama at home and you're not taking care of her, can you talk about how much God loves you?
No.
No. If you got your mama at home and she lives in the worst part of town and you're letting all this bad stuff happen to her, right? Do you love her? No.
No, you got to get her out of that.
Now, does that mean it stops at the food and raiment?
No.
Not at all. And so
now Jesus is very clear. The kingdom is not to be advanced with the sword.
Yeah, that's in Luke 22.
Yeah,
and let's read that because I want to. That's a good way to look at it. Luke 22 and verse 35. Now this is Jesus. He's kind of stitching it up, right? He's getting to the end.
With his disciples.
His disciples, right? So this is the. After the Lord's Supper, not the Lord's Supper, the Last Supper, and he's on his way. This is, somewhere in between the Last Supper, the foot washing has happened at some point.
Yeah, and before we read this, Jesus talking to Pilate. So our pacifist friends, our brothers, will tell us, well, the kingdom of God is not to be advanced with the sword. We don't, Ephesians 6:12, we don't wrestle, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. But the whole point here is that no, we don't hold the sword at people. We don't hold people at gunpoint to get them in the water with Christianity. The point is the sword has its place, and that's what Jesus is going to tell Peter.
Yeah, because he tells them now. They fought about who's greater, and all these things are going on. Peter's not going to deny you, and Jesus he's pouring on them right now, right? It's coming to a head, so he's pouring on them at this point. In verse 35, it says, and he said to them, when I sent you out without money, bag, knapsack, sandals, did you lack anything? So they said, nothing. This is where the limited commission.
He'd sent them out before, yeah.
And he said to them, but now he who has a money bag, let him take it, and likewise a knapsack. And he who has no sword, let him sell his garment and buy one. For I say to you that this which is written must still be accomplished in me. He was numbered with the transgressors, for these things concerning me have an end. This is Jesus, talking about his death, prophecy. So they said, Lord, look, here's two of them. And he said, well.
Here's two swords.
Yep, here's two swords. And he said to him, it's enough. So why did Jesus say that's enough for? Because there may be a time, guys, there may be a time where you're going to need to defend yourself. You're absolutely right, Bob, because Jesus didn't say, take the sword and use it to spread the gospel. But now I'm sending you out with the things that you're going to need, supplies, the necessities of the road, because sometimes it's going to be dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes you're going to need money.
And you got to think yourself. Think about this scenario. I'm going to tell you, this is a harsh reality. If your house is burning, you got 4 kids and I got 3. If your house is burning and it's collapsing in and you've went in and got, let's not even use our kids.
Yeah.
Somebody's got a house that's burning.
Might get too emotional.
Yeah, I know it. Somebody's got a house that's burning. Yeah. They done went in and got 2 of their kids out and now it's starting to crumble. There's no way that you can save the last one. Is the right thing to do to run in and save him? And you know what you have to say? No. Right. You know why?
It's better for the ones alive.
It's better for the ones alive to have their daddy. Now, is that a...
Oh, man.
That just sounds filthy coming out of your mouth.
Yeah.
But it's the truth, right? Is that sometimes you've got to be able to look beyond. There were Christians that...
Well, that won't happen to me. My house will never burn.
Well...
That won't ever happen to me. I'll never be confronted by somebody who wants to kill me.
Yeah, well, I'm going to tell you right now, I've been shot at twice.
Me too.
And I wasn't a police officer.
Yeah.
That you got paid to get shot at.
Right.
But you can find yourself in some bad situations. Mm-hmm. And Jesus, so now I got to look at my life and realize that I've got a responsibility. If I fall off the line, right? If I let a guy harm me, do bad things to me, kill me, whatever, I'll have that much less impact. The world will have that much less impact because I'll be gone. Not that I'm so important. You understand what I'm saying? Like, just think about this, Bob. Luke writes the Gospel of Luke and the book of Acts to one guy.
Yeah.
To one. His intentions were to write it to old... Theophilus. There's a most excellent. That's what I'm trying to think. Whoever Theophilus is, his intentions.
Yeah, one person was important enough.
How many people have you ever taught the gospel to that you hadn't used the book of Acts?
Exactly.
You just think about that. So his intentions was one person, but
2 books of the Bible
told millions.
And you look, what's 28 and 24 together?
It'll
50
be
something.
Yeah, it'd be 52.
You're talking almost half the New Testament right there in those 2 books that Luke wrote.
52 chapters, right? And so you think about that, Bob. One person, you got me?
Was important enough.
One person was important enough for Luke to write, and God could use that.
52 chapters.
Yeah, 50. He got 52 chapters.
Well, let me tell you something, bud. Writing all that down.
That's exactly right. And think about this. This is just kind of a parenthetical thing. At the end of the book of Acts, it just kind of stops with Paul in prison teaching people the Bible because there's no more story to write.
Right. It hadn't been told yet.
It hadn't been told. So
it hadn't been lived yet.
So they couldn't write about it, you know. And so here you are. Luke writes one story, one account to Theophilus about Jesus, and then Then he writes to him about the church.
Hey, let me tell you about the second part. I wrote to you first of all.
Yeah, and so here you go. God uses those untold, I mean, Bob, how many millions of people are going to be in heaven or have heard the gospel? Untold millions then have heard the gospel because of the book of Acts.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so then you think about this, like I have a responsibility that, so you might think, well, I'm going to affect this guy with me, this crazy guy. This crazy guy that wants to do this bad thing, act a fool. And you think, well, I'm going to give my life in exchange for his, because that was the greatest, that's the epitome of the gospel. Jesus, the blessing of the gospel is that it's the only story where the hero dies for the enemy. Well, I'm going to do that. Don't take that high ground. You can't take that.
That's not the high ground.
That's exactly right. And so what you do is like you fight, right? Mm-hmm. You fight for you fight for your family, you fight for
the innocent.
For the innocent, because if you got one less person teaching the gospel, that's one less amount of people that's going to hear it, right? Mm-hmm. So then you have to ask yourself, well, how do you know that's the case? I want you to see what John told the soldiers.
Oh yeah, that's a powerful thing too. And while we're out there with the disciples with a sword, when Peter pulls his out to swing, Jesus didn't say don't ever use a sword again. He said put it in its place.
Yeah, you put it back where it belongs.
There's a place for it.
Yeah,
Peter.
that's exactly.
And right now it's not the place. This is when I'm sending you out later. He didn't say. He says those who live by the sword die by the sword. Christians are not people who live by the sword going out here executing people.
That's right.
But if you do that, you're going to die by it, because it's eventually going to catch up to you. That's one thing that you can YouTube heavyweight championship in the UFC, and generally speaking, there was not a guy who kept it for more than 2 years. Why? Because there's always somebody who's going to come along who's going to beat him. And so you in life, you might win some battles with a weapon, but you're going to eventually lose one of them. If you're going to live by that, you're going to die by it. If you're going to live to fight, you're eventually going to get beat.
Yeah, because time catches up with you, buddy.
It does. To every single one of us. And we don't advance the kingdom, but we can defend the gospel. We can defend the innocent. And so, well, I'm supposed to love my enemies. Well, the question is does my love for my enemies outweigh the love for my neighbor? Or does the love for my enemies outweigh the love for my wife? Because I'm husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself for her. So I hate to say it, but if I'm going to stand by in a passive manner and allow somebody to rape my wife before they kill her, then I am approving of that action. If I'm not going to fight for it.
Yeah, I mean, and so you think about them.
I'm approving of that sin.
That's exactly right. And not only that, the guy doing it, what do you think he's going to think?
Exactly.
Do you think he's worked that in his mind? You know what? Bob is just so nice. I'm over here raping his wife, and Bob is so nice to let me do this that, you know what I'm going to do?
I'm going to go do it again.
Yeah, no, you think he's going to say, I'm going to give my life to Jesus?
No, not at all.
Jesus, I'm coming home because Bob let me rape. No, absolutely not.
And then the other thing is okay, well, do I love my neighbor? Love your neighbor as yourself. Well, what? And if I truly love my enemy, is it okay to allow him to continue in sin?
No.
Is it okay to allow him to continue as a menace of society and to allow him to be judged even more? And so my love for my neighbor, if this guy's going to do this in my house, then what is he going to do to the next house? And so my love for my neighbor should be one that's going to defend my neighbor. It's going to defend my life.
Logic. That's such great logic, Bob. And I'm glad you brought that up. And you know, because if you don't do those, if you don't, like, he that has this world's goods and shuts up his heart against his brother, where does the love of Christ abide in him? What are the goods that we think about material things there, and that's true, right?
Yeah.
But what about all the things that can happen? You know, what about all the bad stuff that can happen there? Like I suppose that I don't care how many guns somebody has. You know, like they can spend their money on whatever. And I suppose that there's a point to where, like, I know guys that will spend money on guns and ammo and stuff like that to the detriment of their family.
Yeah, right.
And that's wrong. and that's a decision that is an individual based on their situation. And I'm not talking about situational ethics. Like it's okay sometimes and sometimes it's not. You can't do things, but now what you've done is you have used this liberty, right, to protect your family in order to make them starve. So I can have 19 ARs.
Right. I got 19 ARs, but I have no rice in the cupboard.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so, that's where you move into the realm of wrong. So in Luke 3, Luke 3,
with the soldiers, these soldiers had come to a point of repentance.
Yes. So we're talking about people, Lord, there is literally at this time only one vocal spokesman for God. As a matter of fact, there hadn't been one in hundreds of years, but there's literally only one at this time. So John the Baptizer, so here we have John the Baptizer out in the wilderness in Luke 3, and these people are coming to him. And he says to them, verse 10, so the people asked him, saying, what shall we do? And he said to them, he who has 2 tunics, let him give to him who has none. And he who has food, let him do likewise. What kind of people do you think he's talking to there, Bob?
Sorry, I was reading something else.
People with affluence.
Yeah.
People that have these, the reason why, do you know the reason why they cast lot for Jesus' garments for? Well, it's prophesied.
Well,
But second of all,
Psalm 22. Yeah.
But second of all, it's because how many shirts you got? I mean, you got a real ugly one on today, but how many shirts?
SEC championship.
In what, Bob?
Baseball.
So if we're at the point of saying
America's sport.
If we're bragging about baseball,
Older than football,
we stink. Okay, and it's like I watched the Carolinas girls lacrosse team win the national championship Sunday, and like
dump. Who cares, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Baseball and basketball are about on the same level. There's a group of people that really care about it, and then the rest of the world's like, who could care less?
You're so funny.
Everybody loves football though.
So here we go. They cast lot for Jesus' clothes because they didn't have 4,000 pairs. I mean, like literally, when we made the room for the ladies and all over there, we took out a
truckload of clothes.
Dude, I mean, it was like, what did y'all bag up?
We bagged them up.
I know. What did y'all bag up? Like 19 bags?
I don't know. It was too many.
Trash bags full, right?
Not the little white ones, the big
black ones, right. Yeah, the big 55-gallon drum ones. Why? Because we got so much. So this kind of loses something to us. But they took Jesus' clothes because they thought, you know what, I can come out financially ahead with this because I'll have one more pair of clothes.
Yeah.
So this is what John says. To you guys that's got more than you need, give it away. To the tax collectors, teacher, what do we need to do? He said, just don't take no more than what's appointed for you. Don't take no more than what you can take.
He didn't say quit being a tax collector.
He didn't. He didn't say don't quit being a tax collector. He didn't say give all your money. When Zacchaeus comes to Jesus,
he says, didn't tell him to quit being a tax collector.
He didn't, and he didn't even tell him. Zacchaeus says, "I'll restore fourfold." That was not in the law.
You're right.
That was not the requirement. Zacchaeus says, "I want to go over and above." Right.
So and that's the whole point. It's as the scriptures tell us. Were you called as a slave? Be a Christian as a slave. Were you called while you were
free?
Free? Be free.
Yeah, don't let your liberty be a tool for vice for sin.
Yeah, so if you're called as a tax collector, if you're repenting as a tax collector, be a tax collector, but don't be a sinful one.
So let's look at verse 14 then, okay? Likewise, the soldiers. What do soldiers do, Bob?
Well, soldiers protect.
So the soldiers is it who's the loudest wins the battle?
No.
Is it who can do the best? And
you think about it, like Rome, they conquered the world with the sword.
That's exactly right.
And they were advancing it, but they would tell the people, they're like, okay, we've conquered you now, and you can rebel, and we'll hang you up by a cross outside the city, or you can pay taxes and you'll have our protection.
Right.
And so these people have been protected under the Roman government.
Yeah, I mean, that. We're going off on a tangent on this. Let's just stop. Let's go back to the text.
Soldiers protect. Yeah.
Yeah. So
they carry swords and spears.
Likewise, soldiers asked him, saying, "What shall we do?" And he said to them, "Quit being a soldier and start being a pacifist and handing out flowers at the outpost."
No,
that's not what he said.
No.
What did he say?
Do not intimidate anyone or accuse falsely, and be content with your wages. He didn't say throw down your swords.
He did not. He did not say throw down your sword.
Quit defending innocent people. Or
punishing
evil people.
Yeah, so you think about this thing then. Is it wrong? So here's some decisions we got to make in our mind. Are there separate laws for Christians and people that are outside the body of Christ?
No.
No. And this is how you can know this. Read John 12 and verse 48.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. We're all going to be judged by the words of Christ.
John 12 and verse 48 says, he who rejects me.
This is Jesus talking.
Yeah, Jesus. And does not receive my words. He doesn't say Christians. This is he. He who rejects me and does not receive my word has that which judges him. The words that I've spoken will judge him in the last day. So whose words will judge us in the last day?
The words of Christ.
Will he just judge the Christians?
No, everybody.
Because if that were the truth, then the worst thing that we could do is preach the gospel. Mm-hmm. If then they will be judged by a supposedly harsher standard, then one of the worst things we can do
is make more Christians.
When
you're going to be judged harder than other people, yeah.
But it's the opposite of that. You know, it's the best thing we can do is preach the gospel so that there will be more people that won't go into judgment.
Yeah. And if you think, well, now only non-Christians can be like soldiers and only non-Christians can be police officers and correction officers, then every rapist and murderer, their best hope, if that's true, their best hope is for a mass conversion of police officers and military.
That's right.
You know, then if
they wanted to change their situation, then they need to start preaching to every person that comes into their prison cell.
Right. And if the logic of the pacifist is true, that only a non-Christian could actually take the life of another person and not be held accountable by God. Or meaning that it's okay for a non-Christian to take the life of somebody, but it's not okay for the Christian. Then if you're on the side of the road, and if this group of people are trying to kill you, then your best hope in that instance is that non-Christian heathens are around you, and not somebody who's covered under the blood of Jesus.
So just think about that prayer. Lord, I'm so thankful for all those people that are going to hell.
Yeah.
So they could save me.
So they could save my life.
Just think about that one.
Yeah, it's just so we beg you in if you're a pacifist to dig in the scriptures and look at it, and I'll tell you there's a great brother that has a good video on this, and that's Brother Don Blackwell, and Searching for Truth, and can the Christian,
that's a YouTube video, ain't
yeah,
it?
Can Christian and self-defense, and so Don has a very good video on this, but I
bet he sounds smarter than we do too.
He does. But if you think about this, it's a very powerful thing, and I think everybody understands that we stand on the side of self-defense, and
so what we need to be having discussions is about, number one, punishment, right? I mean, the reason why nobody comes in your house is not because they're scared that they're not going to find anything. The reason why somebody didn't come in your house and break in your house is not because they think he probably don't have good enough stuff.
Yeah, they probably don't have good enough stuff.
It's because they think that if I come into your house, I'm not going to go back out of it.
Yeah, alive.
Yeah, I've got an actual letter from the former Attorney General of Virginia, and you just talked to, because we had this issue come up with, like, is it okay for us to have guns in church? And do you want to have that discussion?
Yeah, we can have that discussion. That's fine.
That we need to take a break, Brian? Let's take a break.
Yeah, and we're going to come back. One other thing, too, is what about if we don't wrestle against flesh and blood? And because, that's what Ephesians 6:12 says, then does that mean that a dad can never use his belt to spank his child? We'll be back after the break. Life in general is about decisions. Every decision that you make has consequences, and you're tethered to every single one of them. Jesus gives us this awesome opportunity that you don't have to make all the decisions in your life all on your own. You see, he invites you to come to him. to learn from him. Jesus gives us this perfect example, and he tells us in Matthew chapter 11, he says, "Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I'm meek and gentle in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. My yoke is easy, my burden is light." We have so much to learn from Christ, and he gives us this example of saying, if you really want to learn from me, take my yoke. You see, yokes were used back in Bible times to put two animals together to pull a load or to pull a cart or to plow ground. And you would put an ox together, or you would put two mules together, and they would pull the load together. And that's what Christ offers for us, is he's offering to pull the load for us. Christ invites us to come to him, and we're to be his followers, disciples, learners, people who have yoked in with him. And he builds a community around us called the church. The church is to be made up of people who God have looked at their hearts. You see, the world wants to paint a picture of everything that would divide us. The church has painted a picture of the things that unite us. That Christ, he builds this community that when we've yoked in with other people, they may be different from us, but we can learn from each other. What a beautiful thing that it is when we can have difficult conversations. There's no conversation that the church can't have. And that's what Christ wants from us, is he wants community that's strong, that's yoked in together, that learns from each other. And most importantly, that learns from Jesus. And he invites us to come, take, learn, and find.
All right, so the question is, can you love your child and still discipline them?
Well, you can't love your child and not discipline them.
Yeah, great. And that's the whole thing, is like, can I love my enemy?
Well, and that so
without discipline.
Well, you think about like this. So my company was sent back to school, we get this degree, blah blah blah, and so I have to take this class, and the teacher, whenever I have to write this thing, it's this fancy writing class, and so there was a school shooting that just happened then, and I don't remember if it was Sandy Hook or something like that, but we went through this thing, and every time he'd tell me to write something, it was like, write about a life-changing events. I told him about when I became a Christian. Then he was like, write. So every time I was doing it, I was just like, I'm going to preach the gospel, to it, right? So I was like, if I got one person that's going to have to read this thing detail and fact-check me, because I'd cite, you can use the Bible, as a source. And so, like, I made him fact-check, he's going to fact-check these things. Like, I'll make him look up the scriptures and read them. Well, then he was like, no more religious stuff, okay? No more stuff about Christianity. I was like, after about 3 or 4 of them, I was like, okay, so then he was like, talk about something, because one of them was like a controversial subject with a narrow focus. And I was like, I maintain that there's only one pattern by which men will be saved, according to the New Testament standards. So he's like, just quit that and do something else not related to Christianity. I said, okay, school shootings was a hot topic then. I think it was a Sandy Hook one, so that would date it, 5 or 6 years ago now, whatever it was. And I said, I took the letters that they wrote, all the letters that the kids had, the shooters, had written, that left
whether they're a manifesto or whatever.
Yeah, whatever it's called. I was trying to think of the word. Like we did this, and all of them had some kind of atheistic thread to Darwinism in them. We're getting ready to ratchet up Darwinism. We're getting ready to help. We're helping the survival of the fittest, and all those things are because they're not taught the right things at home. And so there's a natural progression. If you're not taught the right things, disciplined to understand what is the right thing to do, you think about this poor kids that are growing up thinking, now I'm a boy, maybe I'm a girl, I think I'm attracted to girls.
Confusion.
Maybe, yeah, just so much confusion when if you can help them realize that, no, that's not the case. That's not the right thing. You know what that does for them? That helps them to compartmentalize and realize that no matter what society tells them, that's not the right thing for me to be doing. So you by default help them with those things. So discipline is a good thing. So then what we have to do is realize that we're in a mental health crisis, right?
Yeah.
We're in a mental, I don't know how you felt about this, but like me and a buddy of mine that used to, this was when I was in college, okay? So this goes back to the 90s. But we came to this conclusion. We started just checking this thing, right? And it was just, we were teenagers and just being silly, but 1 out of every 3 people are crazy.
Oh yeah, and there has a lot of my dealings with people. Most of my fights with people in law enforcement were somebody who was there was a mental health issue, and some standoffs with guns were with mentally health people.
I'm telling you, and when you fight with somebody, like this whole idea of like what fights look like in a movie, they ain't like that.
No,
the majority of every fight I ever been in, I ended up on the ground. I ended up fighting them. I mean, very few fights did we like do the
Jason Statham, Chuck Norris type stuff.
Yeah, the slugfest. That doesn't happen that way. You usually end up, dodging elbows and everything else. And so, because what happens is when you get into these situations, it ain't about like looking cool for a movie. You understand? I mean, like we don't get to speed the film up and make it look like I can, chop out matches with my swing speed, right?
Yeah.
It's about winning at that point. And so all bets are off when you're dealing with crazy people. So like we had this issue come up in our congregation back home because the one that happened in Tennessee at the church up there. Do you remember that?
Nashville.
Yeah. So
church shooting. The
church shooting in Nashville. One of our former members was a member there. So and I won't say his name, he probably won't say it aloud, but one of our former members was a member there. So that kind of hit close to home for us, you know? And so we had the conversation, is it the right thing to do? Because like Virginia's law, for example, says...
You talking about church protection? Is it the right thing? Church security? Is it the right thing?
To bring, to have guns at church, right? And, so I called, it surprised me. I'll be honest with you. It surprised me the people that were against it. That was kind of a surprising thing. The people that I thought would be for it were against it. And so I discovered in this that I said, well, I've got to get the law because I had one brother, when we had this meeting, they got real heated. Like very rarely have I ever seen elders invite everybody for a meeting like this. Because usually this is going to be such a deal, that they need to make a decision. But they invited all the men that would want.
They thought it was heated then. You wait till it's happening.
Buddy, and we had this conversation, and you know what, man? Like, what I realized was that, like, I had guys, somebody that I respected highly, stand up and say, it's a sinful thing for you to bring your gun into the church building.
Yeah.
And I want to tell you that the law says, and he quoted the law, he said, the law says it's illegal in Virginia to bring a weapon into a house of worship. He quoted the law. I said, so I thought this might happen. I didn't expect it from this person, but I thought it might happen. So I'd got in touch with the Attorney General of Virginia, and I got him to give me what the law says and then his interpretation of the law. This is the guy that
right?
The guy, right? Not Chris, not
the
Bob.
The prosecutor, the guy who's going to be doing it.
The guy that's going to be doing it, Ken Cuccinelli. I got the letter signed from him. Now he's not there anymore, but he said the law.
You can't find it in the moment.
No, he's not there in office anymore.
Oh yeah.
He said.
I'm messing with you about your email.
Yeah, I know. I couldn't find the letter, but he said that the law states that it is illegal to bring a weapon into a house of worship without leadership consent or a reasonable threat. And Cuccinelli wrote in this letter, I would assume in any situation in our day and time that there's always going to be a reasonable threat. That's what he wrote in there.
Yeah.
Signed it. You understand what I'm saying? So why would he write that for? Because there's crazy people out there.
Yeah.
So,
well, Mississippi law today considers your house of worship as an extension of your home. Like they're the castle doctrine for you and your protection. The same way.
Castle meaning like
this domain. Is your domain. It's just like your house. And so if someone breaches the doors of our house here with a firearm, and you feel that reasonable threat that they're going to take life, then you have the right to defend yourself. That's what the law states. Same way with your vehicle. That's the castle doctrine. You know, you have this constitutional carry, and so you can carry that. There's many states that have adopted that, but also, like Mississippi goes on further to state that if you are a part of a church security team as a Christian, and there's documentation on file with the church that says you're part of the church security team, and you fire your weapon and you miss the suspect, but you hit somebody who's innocent, you can't be held liable through the.
So Ben shoots me trying to shoot you, and you're the bad guy. Mm-hmm. Ben can't get in trouble.
Ben can't get in trouble for that, but also there's civil protection for Ben.
So in other words, Jessica, if he puts one through my eye socket, Jessica can't come back and sue Ben, later in a civil suit.
If Ben carries in the church, that's if he's on the church security team.
Right.
If he's technically written down, he's on our church security team and he's carrying a weapon, and he uses that weapon, and then there's collateral damage from it. There's protection under Mississippi law that will even help him in a civil suit.
So then let's talk about then how to responsibly do this.
And that's one thing is you as the church leadership, you need to provide for your own. We need to be wise with the times. You quote that verse quite a bit that these men in the Old Testament, they were wise with the times, and we need to do that. And part of that is you need to have a security protection team. And if that's nothing more than 5 people who that are carrying weapons, that they're kind of serving as ushers or whatever it might be, put them down. Put it in somewhere in a file that they're part, and have your church leadership sign that document saying that they're on the, because then it's just going to further protect them down the road.
So let's talk about, and let's wrap it up with this. All right.
Yes, sir.
You listening, boy?
Yeah.
Now, I suggest you tell me. I suggest that we wrap it up with this. Because Ben's going to be holding up his 20-minute sign again on his furlong.
Yeah.
How important then should we, if we're going to make this decision that we're going to do this, how important then is it for us to understand our responsibility in carrying our weapons, knowing how to use our weapons, knowing you'll be able to speak to this a lot more than I could, as far as your training and understanding. So tell me, what then is my responsibility?
You talking about if you're as a Christian or as a church team or
yes, all those.
Well, I'll just tell you this, that your responsibility to be ready for the fight is always, that's always your responsibility. And the same way that it's your responsibility to always give a defense to anyone who asks you. So it's just as much, I feel that it's just as much my responsibility as a husband to work every day to provide for my wife and my family financially. The same way it's my responsibility to work every day to get better at providing protection for them every single day. And so to me, those go hand in hand. That's my love for my bride. That's the love for Christ. Christ was perfection every single day for his bride. And so that's a great responsibility. And me as a husband, that's the way I'm supposed to love her. So, so with that being said, too, does a shepherd take a day off from the sheep to not protect their souls?
So let me ask you. Let's neck it down a little bit tighter then, if I can. What kind of bullets do you carry in your gun?
Well, one, they're real ones. Two, they're ones that are going to.
Are you carrying do you have full metal?
I'm carrying hollow points.
Why is that?
Because one is they won't penetrate as far into walls, but two, once they hit soft tissue, they're going to expand.
So why are you doing that for?
Well, there's the fact that it's going to, one, if there's innocents on the other side of a wall, there's less likely that it's going to kill them. Two, if there's a suspect, and if it does hit their, then it's if it goes into their flesh, it's going to expand and hopefully create a bigger hole to stop evil.
You've understood the impact of what you have in your hands, is what you're saying.
Yeah, that's right.
Because I might shoot through 3 people with a full metal jacket bullet. If I just hit soft tissue, there's a chance I could shoot right through 3 people's rib cage.
Yeah.
and not do anything.
Yeah.
So-
and that's part of that. Part of that's knowing your target beyond. The other thing is that in the church shooting that happened out in one of them out in Texas, where there was a security guard, the suspect kills 2 people. I think it was 2. It was 2 or 3 people. He killed one of the security team guys as he was going to draw. He brought a shotgun in with a big old raincoat or trench coat or something. And then this guy who he was very trained, he made one headshot with the guy.
Yeah.
And he's just, eradicated evil. Like, the news covered it for like a day and a half, and like everybody was like, woohoo for this church security guy. He was hailed as a hero, and like there's nothing else about it. But with that being said, though, like there was some video. It was the first ever church shooting where there was video evidence because they had it in their auditorium. Well, there's a lot of things that you're going to do when your sympathetic nervous system kicks in, and that's your fight or flight thing. Either you're going to run away from this incident, or you're going to fight in this incident, and you have that trigger switch. A deer runs. Many times a coyote will run, but there's a time whenever a coyote will fight too. Now, with that being said, there was one person. If you go back and watch that church shooting, there was a person who was sitting like almost on the back row. They heard the first gunshot. They stood up. They sat down. They stood up. They went forward. They sat back down. They didn't know what to do. And there was up and down, moving over. Well, why would somebody stand up and get down? Stand up and get down. And the whole the reason is because when you're not trained in those scenarios, you don't know what you'll do, and so your body is just reacting and people go, why in the world would somebody stand up whenever there's a gunshot? Well, possibly part of that trigger system in that person was, oh, I'm going to go fight. And then it's, oh, I don't have anything to fight with, so I'm going to sit back down. And then it's like, oh, but I really should be doing something about this. Oh, but I'm going to sit back down. And they just didn't know what to do. And so you have to put your body into situations so that you'll know what to do with. And that's one reason why we train with stress tests. And one of the things, but outside of the police academy, a lot of these guys, they didn't do a lot of stress on their things. Well, when I got involved as a firearms instructor, one thing that I did, and this caused a lot of problems with my brothers in arms, but we put physical activity into it. You have to run because your heart's already going to be beating at 150 beats per minute. Well, that's a lot different than shooting on a static line. So, as a responsibility, one that I would say is you need to train. You need to train in a situation where don't just go and shoot. Shoot after you've did 20 burpees, and because that's going to be the reality.
I'm coming for you, Elizabeth.
Yeah,
for like you used to say.
Yeah, and then the other thing is like I also realize that there's a greater chance at times that I may be in a ground fight with somebody before I ever have to use deadly force. And I don't want to ever have to use deadly force because I wasn't trained in ground fighting. And so that's one thing that, that's one reason, couple of reasons I started jiu-jitsu. One is puts more discipline in my life, puts more discipline in my children's life. And then 3, and these aren't really in any particular order, but like I've been in 3 Bible studies with guys who I'm rolling around, meeting new people. And there's one of the first guys who ever rolled with was, Dr. Who. He's one of his students. And so then Dr. Who brought 2 of his teachers. Well, they're James's 3 teachers. So I took a selfie with them, and I said, James, I got a lot more interaction over you than what you actually realize. And because I was there with 3 of his professors. But as a responsibility, as one trained in a heavy environment.
And so then there's the physical side,
Mm-hmm.
right? You got to know, understand all this and that and the other, and then you still have to make. We're back to this idea of making a judgment.
Mm-hmm.
These guys ball up their tires, jump out of the car. Jessica still has to make a decision, right? So, like the dude that rolls in with the trench coat. Somebody rolls in with a trench coat in the middle of August in South Mississippi. What do you think? Do you think they're up to something nefarious? I'd say that's a reasonable assumption.
Yeah, he should have been checked at the door. And, yeah, he was somebody who had already been to their church, and they had already helped before, I believe. Either way, he needs to be checked.
You still need to spot crazy.
Yeah.
So you know what that's going to require? A judgment. Like we're in a society where we're not supposed to judge and this and that and the other. Well,
we're not condemning them to hell. What we're
doing is we're making a judgment. Like I think there's something really bad going to happen here.
Yeah.
I think there's something bad going to happen here. So,
one thing that you can do as a church too is you can post a sign at your parking lot that all people at all times are subject to for security checks. You know, and all bags and/or vehicles are subject to security checks on this property. This is private property, and so you can post that, and people think, well, you can't do that. That's not welcoming. Well, you're not going to be shaking down Miss Dorothy Bollinger when she's walking through the door, all right, with her walker. No, we're not doing that. But if there's evil who's going to show up, that number one, they're not law abiding. Number two, these people who are going to do evil, they're not going to abide by the laws. The most recent shooting that was racially, driven up there in Buffalo, New York, he drove from a gun-toting society to a gun-free zone to make the shooting. They're going to go to these areas that they think are gun-free zones.
Schools,
yeah.
The Batman shooter in Colorado, go into a movie theater where they got signs up and say no guns allowed, and everybody's crammed in there. I mean, like literally, they're in there like cordwood.
Yeah.
The dude in Vegas at the concert. Why do you think they do that stuff for? Because when people want to go crazy and go big crazy, they work this stuff out in their mind how to go big crazy
for a long time. And so, okay, well, we're going to hire a police officer then to protect our church. That's great. But if you're going to allow them to commit deadly force to protect you, then you better check out Romans 14, because in what you approve, you're going to be judged by the things that you approve of. So that I think that the pacifist idea is not supported fully in Scripture. That it's one of those. Now, to you, if it's sin to you, then don't do it.
That's right. So, hey, we appreciate you guys coming or listening, tuning in with us, whatever you want to say. And
we hope this helped you. And if you got more questions, by all means, hit us up. And
yeah, I mean, we're not scared of the questions.
Yeah.
We may not be able to answer them.
And this, by all means, was not meant to just be exhaustive either. We just hope that this kind of got the juices flowing.
Yeah, that's the words I was going to say, too. So, hey, appreciate you guys coming, and we'll see you next week.
This is the Unscripted Podcast.